let's dispense with the pledge and let's get right down to it. So I'll open up this workshop for May 23rd, please. First item.
Western Main Transportation Transit Study.
Right on. You have the floor, sir.
Terrific. Good evening, everybody. I'm Craig Zerhurst. I'm Community Relations Director for Western Main Transportation Services. To my right here is Carol Morris of Morris Communications, working with AECom, the transit gurus, the consultants that we're using have been provided through the state to find ways that we can make what we're doing more relevant and better, whether it's for Lisbon or the rest of our area. With us tonight also Sandy Buchanan, our General Manager, Joe Cahoon from AECom, Jennifer Williams from AvCog, and Russ Sewell, who's our Finance Director. So we'll hopefully have ways of answering any questions that you have. Sure.
I have to speak into the microphone, is that, okay.
It's wireless there too as well.
You want this?
One, okay.
You have to switch it.
Testing, 1,
2, 3?
There it
Yes.
is.
So we're going to do about a 20-minute presentation. Talk a little bit about the study, how it came about. Talk about the public outreach program, which is in full swing right now. And then we'll talk about some of the data that we've already pulled together about in the region. And then we will get to the most important part, which is hearing from you. And we'll have an open discussion of what the needs are and so forth. Questions? No. Okay.
So talking about the program, the needs, and the purpose, the background of this whole study. For years, we've been aware of the fact that there have been unmet transit needs within the region. We were, thank you very much. We took over the operation of the Brunswick Explorer bus about a year ago, and that put us into a position of being only one town away from being able to create a service that would go from Lewiston, Auburn, all the way down to Bath and Brunswick. We went to the state and said, okay, this is our vision, but along with that, we're also talking about a corridor from Farmington down to Lewiston, Auburn. We're talking about looking at ways to reinvent our outlying services because honestly, the main care brokerage has destroyed all of the ability that we previously had to coordinate trips, and it has actually not helped the people who even are on main care. So we're looking at a way to go back to a more public transit model, away from, in quotes, a social services model, which doesn't mean we don't want to serve those people. It just means that we're trying very hard to change the game so that we can be of more use and be more relevant to everybody in the community, get people to work, to educational opportunities, to essential services like shopping, which currently we're having some issues with. When the main care brokerage kind of started going south, we lost between 20 and 25% of our capacity because of performance metrics, and that's what's really driving this. So with that, all of that coming together, we went to the state and they said, sure, we'd love to help you figure out how to do your job better. So they are funding this study, and we have currently put out over 3,000 emails with a link to a survey, which we'll talk a little bit about the results that are pertinent specifically to Lisbon tonight. We have a 30% return rate, which is almost unheard of. We have over 1,000 respondents from those 3,000 emails. Now they've cascaded out, people have forwarded them, but we feel that what we're coming back with is statistically significant, accurate, and actionable. And that's pretty much the background. Any questions about that? So moving forward, the meeting tonight has to do with what format, what form, what level of service the the town of Lisbon might want to examine. We're looking at a commuter service that goes from Lewiston, Auburn down to Brunswick and Bath. We have a lot of people who've responded who work in those locations, who live here. We're currently running the Lisbon Connection bus. The ridership is very good and very consistent. The other models may be going to a smaller demand response route here in town. These are all possibilities. But one of the things we brought AECom with us tonight was to discuss what we've already found from the surveys. Carol?
Well, now that Craig has stolen my thunder, and I can't excite you with the fact that we have over 1,000 respondents, which is incredible. I'm working right now on a similar study in the greater Portland area. We have 300 down there. So that's a measure of how impressive this is. The surveys went out both. First, let me ask you, how many people here have taken the survey? Hands. Ooh, now we can go up to 1,020. The survey is directed to riders and non-riders, and it's online, but we are also doing hard copies. We just got a packet back from Craig to input. Kind of asking people what they're using now, how they feel about it, where the need is, how satisfied they are with what's there, and what they like and they don't like. So pretty basic stuff. It's a good, solid survey, so I'm not going to say more because we will, can we get them, can we get them the link?
Sure.
Okay. So it would be great for you guys to take this. I think we have, how many Lisbon residents do we have? 34. Okay, so we only have 34 from Lisbon, so that's good, but it's not enough, so.
That would be a perfect place to start, because we had the link right there.
Yes, it is.
Could you read it? I can't see.
It's www.surveymonkey.com.
There's an easier way to do it.
Thank you.
Craig's the man.
Yeah, that'll get you there, but we can get you a shortcut. We love shortcuts. It's WMTSbus.org. It's www, but if you just put in WMTSbus.org, it does take you there.
Thank you.
Absolutely. WMTS bus.
On our website, town website.
Isn't it on there, Tracy?
It was on there, but then they had the survey date as ended, so I took it down.
Okay.
We can easily put it back up again if you can extend the survey.
That would be cool.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy.
We've also done a couple of stakeholder meetings, and one in Wilton and one at the MTW offices. We've had hospitals, businesses, other transportation providers come. We had great turnout. I think we had about 15 people at each of them, and a lot of great conversation and a lot of good feedback. And we are going to be repeating those with the recommendations once they are developed, so that we can find out, here's what we saw, here's what we think you should do, give them a chance to comment and adjust that. And this is also public outreach. You guys have your own workshop, and so we're hoping to get just as much good information from you. And with that, I think so. All right, thank you. Oh, I'm okay. Oh, she's got a spot. All right.
I think I'll stand up if that's all right, and I'm going to grab this. So as part of this study, there's multiple steps. So first of all, we're looking at existing conditions, so existing transportation services. WMTS operates a lot of services in the area. There's also intercity bus type of services in the area, and obviously Amtrak goes to Brunswick. So we're looking at all the existing services, where there might be potential for coordination or coordinated schedules and things like that. So we collect all the baseline information and use that as we develop our recommendations. We also, a major component is looking at existing travel patterns, whether or not people are using the bus, how they get from A to B, and most people use a personal car. That's not going to shock anybody. So we look at the patterns, for people who work in a certain place, where are they coming from? And I'm going to show you guys a bunch of maps for people who work in different places and live in Lisbon, and then also those that work in Lisbon, and talk a little bit about the survey results that we've gotten so far. So WNTS operates the Brunswick Explorer, the CityLink service in Lewiston, Auburn, the Lisbon Connection, and also some seasonal services, as well as some demand responsive services. Focusing on the Lisbon Connection, it comes up black on this map, so the Lisbon Connection is this black line shown here. It was red on my version, but it shows up black on the screen. So that's the Lisbon Connection service. The map on the left is population density, and the map on the right is job density. So it shows that the black line is covering the major areas of population and most of the major areas of employment. So that shows that the bus routing is serving the places that are most obvious anyway to serve. There is obviously a lot of more that goes into where bus service should go, other than just population density and concentration of jobs, but that's a good place to start. So then we have a set of maps, and in all of these, we'll do a zoom out and a zoom in kind of view. So this is a full regional view of the WMTS service area. Again, population density on the left, job density on the right, and Lisbon is here. And so you see where the concentration is of both employment and jobs on a regional scale. And now we'll zoom in to a closer look for what's more relevant for the folks in this room. So these maps all look at where people go to work. So these maps, and again, this is the same thing so it's the regional view on the left, a zoom in on the right. So for folks who work in Lewiston, Auburn, where do they live? So we try to make the connection. So where are the people who are working in Lewiston, Auburn living? So you see here the darker, the yellowish color, the more folks that are working in that area. So people working in Lewiston, Auburn, the largest concentration is in Lewiston and Auburn. But you can see in Lisbon as well, that's almost all colored yellow. So there are folks all over the town that work in Lewiston and Auburn. Same thing for Brunswick and Bath. Folks who work in Brunswick and Bath, they primarily live in Brunswick and Bath, but then they also live throughout the region, and here's Lisbon as well. Folks working in Brunswick and Bath live throughout the town as well. And then the very similar thing for Topsham. So folks who work in Topsham, they live primarily in Topsham and Brunswick, but there's a very big concentration here in southern Lisbon, and then also some more in Lewiston, Auburn as well. And that helps us to understand where people are going to and coming from, particularly when we're looking at a commuter type service that Craig mentioned earlier. So we have had the survey open about 3 weeks now, and as Craig mentioned, we have over 1,000 responses. It was 1,018 when I checked yesterday morning, and it's been going up every day steadily. We're getting our reminder emails that the numbers are going up every day, which is great. So we pulled out 2 sets of data from what we have so far. The first set is folks who live in Lisbon. So their response based on being Lisbon residents, and they are 34 respondents so far. So what I'm talking about here is from the 34 respondents who lived in Lisbon. And the second set will be those who chose on the survey that they go to Lisbon for some reason. Could be for work, for school, for shopping, for services, whatever it may be. And there were over 100 of those. So we'll look at both the residential perspective as well as the destination type of perspective. So from a residential perspective, most folks said that they were traveling between 10 and 30 minutes to get to work or school or to their appointments or whatever it is. Whatever they did most frequently, it's usually between 10 and 30 minutes away from their home. 91% use a personal vehicle now. That's not too surprising. 65% of the Lisbon residents have never used transit service, transportation, public transportation in Maine. They may have used it elsewhere on vacation or whatever, but we specifically asked about in Maine. 9% of the respondents are current riders. So again, those are mostly Lisbon Connection riders, because that's the service that's here. Most people who responded said that they used the service for recreation and entertainment. That was the number one trip purpose, followed by work, school, medical appointments, shopping, and social and family visits. So most folks who responded, who are Lisbon residents, said that they've used public transit for recreation and recreation and entertainment. We asked people if they've used transit services before, whether their satisfaction level is with the existing services. And there was a huge range of responses, from very satisfied to not satisfied to I don't know, because I haven't used it in a while, or I don't really know what's available. So we allowed them to fill in some more responses, and we have a lot of good information from that. And 55% of the folks who said they've never used transportation services before said it was because the bus does not fit into their schedule. And that's kind of news to our ears, because then we can ask the question, well, what would fit into your schedule? And if it does fit into your schedule, is it something that, that you'd be willing to use to make a trip, a work trip, a school trip, or any other type of trip? And also, for the Lisbon residents as well as folks going to Lisbon, it's an interesting subset. It's not your typical transit ridership response. Most have 2 or more cars available, and most had higher median household incomes, and the majority had completed college or graduate level school. So it's a highly educated, well-to-do population, which is not generally what you get when you conduct a transit service study. So this is something that we need to consider and talk about with you guys. From your perspective, is this representative of of all the folks in Lisbon, or are there people who aren't being represented here, and how can we get their voice heard? So then, flipping to the other side are the folks who said that they come to Lisbon for some reason, and we included for all reasons. We can further break it out for each particular reason, but we used all reasons for this particular case. So most people said, we asked them if there were bus service available, where do you want to go to? So for the folks who said Lisbon, 7 came from Brunswick, 5 from Bath, 3 from Topsom, 2 from Freeport, and then the rest were a mix of just one response. So the majority of folks who said they were coming to Lisbon were coming from Brunswick and Bath. And then we asked, when do you need transportation services? And early morning is the top bar here. Evening, 5 to 8 p.m. Daytime was less, and also late evening after 8 p.m. was less. But you see, this is Saturday and this is Sunday, so there's quite a lot of people who said that they are also interested in weekend service as well. All right, so again, the same subset of respondents, those who are coming to Lisbon for whatever purpose. I didn't mention the number before, but it is 142 people said that they come to Lisbon for some reason. The most popular places that they're coming from are Durham, Lewiston, Lisbon itself. And based on the same type of questions that we asked, and we were talking about with the folks who actually live in Lisbon, we have this very similar response. Most have 10 to 30-minute trips. 86%, so fewer than the folks who are Lisbon residents, used a personal vehicle. 55%, I think it's the same, have never used transportation before, but a much higher percentage are current riders and have used transportation in the past. Again, even with a mix of folks going a lot of different places, saying that they came to Lisbon for any reason, again, recreation and entertainment was the largest trip purpose, followed by shopping and work and school. So it's a little bit different order than just the Lisbon residents. Again, a split level of satisfaction, and when asked why they haven't used transportation services in the past, 62% said that they had a car, so they had no need for public transportation. And very similar to the Lisbon resident population, Most have 2 or more cars available, most are in a higher income bracket, and most had completed some college or graduate school. So again, a highly educated, higher income type of representation that we're seeing from this particular group. So, for this study, as I mentioned, we are pulling together data from sources like the travel patterns and the maps that we've put together and done a market analysis. And then we also take the information that we've gathered from the survey, the stakeholders, the interviews, this workshop, and we pull all of that together to try to come up with recommendations that meet the needs of the people in the communities in which WMTS operates, and to make it sustainable and also, functional for what people need. So the study goals are to develop transportation options that optimize rural-urban connections, because there's a lot of folks who are kind of stuck in the rural areas that need to come into the urban areas for work, for school, for services, for shopping, etc. Foster economic development, increase access to employment and education, build on the success of the current services. As Craig mentioned, the Lisbon Connection has been very successful since its inception. Use appropriate service types that match the demand. So we're looking at commuter service, circulator service, demand responsive service, all different types of transportation service based on demand, and identifying alternatives that are both economically feasible and sustainable for the longer term. So the worst possible thing is to start something new and then have to pull it back and pull it away just when people are depending on it. So we want to make sure that we're identifying options that are feasible and sustainable. So with that, I'd like to turn it back over to Carol and get your take.
Lights off. So I'd like to ask you folks, do you want to just, because they'll have to come up and use the microphone, do you want to have a discussion with you folks first and then do that, or do you want to just mix it all up?
I think we are pretty bipolar that we like the whole mixed right up, so anybody has something they'd like to bring into the discussion,
Okay,
feel free.
Fire away.
so anybody who's sitting back there who wants to comment should come up here, and I'll hand you the mic. Oh, you want to start already? Well, let's go.
Excellent. Yes.
I was going to give instructions, but clearly not needed.
Good evening. My name's Dale Morgan. I'm visually impaired, do not drive, thank goodness. And I use the bus very regularly. I've lived in Lisbon 6 years, and for the first 5, never used the bus. For the first 4 years, never used the bus, never even paid that much attention to it. But then a friend of mine moved to Auburn, and I had to learn how to use the bus to get to see her. And since then, my friends are still my friends because I'm not always tapping them on the shoulder and asking them to take me to the grocery store, to take me to see Wendy, to take me to any number of things, the movies, the Auburn Library. Instead, I'm able to plan my day around the Lisbon Connection schedule. And that has opened a whole new world because I'm able to make doctor's appointments and get there myself. I'm able to visit with friends that aren't within walking distance in a convenient manner. The bus driver is for the Lisbon Connection is David, who is one of the kindest, most welcoming, awesome people you could ever have driving a bus. Very accommodating, and probably the best driver you could have doing the Lisbon Connection. And I just want to thank you because I know that there's a town grant that helps with the expenses of the Lisbon Connection. And I want to thank you for continuing with that because it certainly made a big difference in my life. Thank you.
Thank you. Who else would like to speak?
Can you speak on that? One of the things, you, Craig.
Oh, yes.
You, in that regard, quite specifically.
You're pointing.
Where I was going with that is, being the new kid on the County Commissioner Budget Committee.
Thank you.
When you spoke to them the night that you were actually there,
Right.
you were asking for the additional funds to be able to incorporate what we're actually talking about, and it was met with probably the coldest water you could actually have thrown on it that night. But one of my takeaways associated with that, we have a very active ridership in this area. And I know I spoke to you at that meeting, and I know you've spoken to Diane since in that regard, is that give people a flavor for how much ridership is being used in your service currently, if you could.
Sure. So probably the easiest way to understand it is that we have 5 round trips a day between Lisbon Falls and the Oak Street bus station. And that is weekdays, and it is not on holidays. But we're averaging about 5 riders per bus per trip. So if you multiply it, that gives you the total, and it's not a small total, and I can take a second and look that up. I am somewhat embarrassed that on my desk is sitting a report that has the actual numbers. You know how that works.
But that's okay. I mean, what I remember from that, it was somewhere, we had 200 active riders from this
Right.
area on a regular basis.
On a regular basis, yes, absolutely. So it is a robust ridership. I think that the potential to increase that ridership here is there, especially if we are looking at doing more through trips, heading to locations that other residents of the town want to get to. We at one point had a very popular ride that went down to Topsom, alternating with Lewiston for shoppers. But we actually, out of that, had comments, gee, it would be great if we could get down here every day. But that's, 5 years ago when we stopped that? So the system as it is working today is not bad. But the question is, where do you want it to go? How can we serve more people? How can we make it, again, I'm going to come back to the word relevant to people's lives and do more good things that are going to help people out, whether it's employment, whether it's education. These are hot buttons everywhere, but they're real. There are employers down in the Brunswick area that are screaming for people. There are people from this area, and there are people from Lewiston who want to get through. So it's how to make this work for everybody. But we want to make sure that because Lisbon has the Lisbon Connection, we don't want to take that from you. We want to make sure that whatever we do works even better for the people of the town. Did that answer the question?
No, it absolutely did, because one of the things that we as counselors are very fond of and we know is the fact is we're 35 minutes in any direction for employment. And the fact is that's why a considerable number of people actually settle here in that regard. We're not a service center like Lewiston, like Brunswick, that has that kind of infrastructure, but we're right in the middle of it to be able to benefit from that infrastructure. Likewise, Augusta, Portland, they're all within that 35-minute map associated with that. Anything that opens us up with the model that we got going for the Lisbon Connection, that's coming out of here, that's just the right-hand turn. If we can open up the left-hand turn in north and south, we would be all over this.
Very good. Thank you for that comment. That's helpful, and appreciate the support on that. There you are.
Do you think, how many folks in this room have, besides this person here, has taken this bus? You two? And you? Okay. So I'm going to start with you.
Yes.
Can you talk about your experience and good, bad, how you thought it could be improved? And then I really kind of like to go around, and if you folks haven't taken the bus yourself, that's fine, but perhaps you've heard from somebody, because we'd like to get a little more specifics tonight. Thanks.
Okay, I wrote it a couple of years ago just to test it and see how it was going when it was came up before us again with a budgetary issue, and I thought it was quite effective to drive down to Lewiston and get back. It was takes about the same time as a car ride would, but I live out in the country, so it's a little harder for me to get there. I'd have to drive to a bus stop and then change, which is part of the problem for rural people. I think if you're gonna go halfway in a car, then it's like might as well go the whole way. But I think for people that are living in the downtown area, it's really much more useful. I think it would be really effective there if you could just walk to the bus stop.
Right, okay.
Now, it's my understanding, too, we also have secondary ridership, but they'll pick you up right at your home.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. That's the key benefit to us in this community.
So because of some restructured rules from the Federal Transit Administration, which we were glad to see, we are now operating the Lisbon connection as what they refer to as a flex route service. And a flex route, by its definition, has a schedule with marked stops that are hopefully arrived at on time. But it also gives us the ability to go off of that route, and the federal statute states 3/4 of a mile, which in Lisbon, from where we have our corridor, is a lot of the population. We're getting to a lot of the places. So if you have someone who is disabled or unable to make the stop, we have the ability to reach out that 3/4 of a mile to pick up at the curb.
Right. You mentioned that night, I think it's the Route 9 corridor, when you're actually coming in from one of
Yes.
your routes. There's a lot of ridership in the Route 9. So
Yes, there
it
is.
was eye-opening just to see, when you have 200 active riders throughout the course of the year, where are they coming from? Just what's their intended purpose for
Right.
just what we have now?
A lot of them are, I would say the majority are still here, more or less in the center of town or along the 196 corridor, but we've got those folks up along 9. There are a couple who are off of, you're going to have to help me with the name of the road. If you turn left at Farwell Mill and then you turn right, that road up there. Upland, thank you. There are a couple up there. They don't ride all the time, but they do ride. So we are taking people from a wider swath of the town than just the 196.
It's appointments, it's
Yes.
shopping, it's all of the.
We have people using the Lisbon connection to get to work too. We'd hoped that Dingley Press would be able to be with us tonight. They couldn't join us. But we have people we take there regularly for employment. And that in their residence, so it works both ways.
That was one of the eye-openers from yours. We're very familiar with the fact that we live here for a reason, because we can go in that direction, but it is a destination.
Lisbon, I think, from everything I'm hearing and seeing, has also put itself into a position where you're probably going to be the next hot spot to get people.
Please say that again?
With the development going on, with the available land, with the housing stock that's going to be coming online, I predict that Lisbon will be the next hot spot in the region. It's a beautiful town. It's a handy location. You have great schools. What's not to love?
Look at that. Put him on the postcard, please. Thank you, sir.
Anybody else here would like to say anything? No?
I've not used your service, but at 2:30 this morning, I will be using Amtrak's because I can pick it up in Portland. If you make that connection to actually pick it up a little more conveniently, by all means. I loathe parking in Boston, but to pick up the flight, it's worthwhile to be able to open up that corridor.
Yeah.
You know, and it's the night, last time we did it, there were 3 other couples that I recognized from the Lisbon area. 2:30 on, there's a lot of people that are making that Logan connection for sure.
Okay. What about you folks over here? Anybody, you came here for a reason?
Yeah, there's a budget workshop right after you guys, so.
Oh. It's hard to compete with a budget workshop, you know?
You were all thinking, we got a great crowd.
Yeah, I know, I was excited. Yes?
I would like to, okay, I'd like to see a mid-morning run to Lewiston, because like if I have a doctor's appointment, and I always request an afternoon appointment, but if they don't have afternoon appointments and I have to go in the morning, I have to leave here at 7 o'clock for like an 11 o'clock appointment. It would be really convenient to have, you know, a 10 o'clock or something like that, mid-morning route. And I'm sure that would be true when you go to Brunswick, too.
Thank you. Any final takers?
That's cool. I appreciate that. We have to go. Thank you.
Hang on.
I understand there's going to be. I understand there's going to be a possibility of a run coming out of Lewiston and going up to Thompson to connect up. Have we discussed that earlier? Yeah. I think that would be a big boom for the area and added value to the bus system itself. And of course, that connection will end up going to Bath and Brunswick and possibly down to Freeport, which would be a double thing. And especially that earlier run, she was talking about in the morning, would be an excellent one if you could do it. Because there's a gap there, you know, a serious gap to get in town, get back there. That's it, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
We done? Anybody else? You want to say goodbye?
Say goodbye. I want to say thank you to everybody for allowing us to come in front of you. We encourage you to go out to our website, which is, again, wmtsbus.org. Take the survey. Encourage your friends and family to take the survey. We absolutely send it around or send the link around to people that you think would be interested. We want to get as much input as we can, and because it's an online survey, it's very easy to tabulate. It helps the way AECOM structured it. It makes it very easy to get meaningful information out of it. It's not just going to sit there and be a mess. It actually, we've seen some great numbers that have come in already that are actionable, as we've said. So the more the merrier. On the website, you'll see that it says right now the survey is done on the 22nd. Obviously, that's not the case, and I think what I'll do is I'll just take the drop-dead date off of it. We want people to feel comfortable taking the survey, and thank you all so much.
Thank you. We're gonna take like a 5-10 minute recess to be able to clear the room and stuff before we start the other guys.
I
Thank
did
you,
bring
everybody,
some
for
of the
coming out.
hard copy surveys. If anybody wants to have one, if they don't have a computer, I can share that with you.
Please.
Yeah, I'll take a hard copy too.
Diane we can market them right here in the office too.
You want more than that?
Nope.
More than that, or is that enough?
What do you think? You got enough?
Might put some at the, hey, you might put some at the library too.
Oh, right on.
Oh, yeah, if you wanna give me a few more, I can send them down to the library.
You know what? I'll just give you the whole
Why don't you just
bunch.
give me the whole thing?
Appreciate it. Thank
Give
you.
some to Diane.
Yeah, I think at the library, there's people who might get that otherwise don't have a
No,
computer
that's a
that
good
would come
point.
in.
Miss Meadows is right here. Exactly. Hugs to life, right? Hugs.
They're also our commuter bus as far as for the Moxie Festival as well, which, yeah.
Yeah.
What do you mean, what? You gotta get my letter here soon. And Dave, the driver, had told me that there was a woman with Farwell Mill that was in a wheelchair, and for the first time ever, she was able to go to the Moxie Festival a couple of years ago. Because she was able to take the bus.
Very cool. I'm gonna defer to you.
thinks of any questions after the fact, give us a holler. Diane knows where we are.
On the fund balance?
Thank
Yeah,
you.
that's probably the easy pick.
Have a great night. Thank you.
Thank you, Craig. They did that. As soon as he walked to the mic, he just like a mic drop. They weren't on the current budget. They were getting nothing from it because in LA, they have their own ridership program. So in fact, is anything he's going to talk about doesn't even hit their radar. But what our small piece associated with that is, and we can benefit 200 people actively throughout the course of the year. It's a win-win.
You know, and if they could expand it to weekends too.
Yeah, or if they just made it to Thompson and Brunswick would be a big help for
Left,
going that
left to right,
direction. Hook up with other stuff there.
north and south. I think you get people on a bus run down to Freeport.
Oh, yes, or if you could
Freeport
connect.
would
You
have
won't see me there because I can't.
But
Unless it hits Home Depot, I'm not going.
when I heard them introduce Freeport as one of the destinations,
Yeah.
I think it's logical and it makes sense.
Yeah.
There's an Amtrak connection there too, as well as Brunswick.
Right, if you go to Brunswick, you gotta run on the Amtrak right there.
There's two different Amtrak connections, right? But it's a
Yeah.
preference thing, it's all about choice. I'm a big, what's the cost? Yeah. Additional buy-in, I imagine, like, they don't come here pitching to us because they don't want something.
No, but I think at one of our meetings, they get down to Brunswick and Thompson have to buy into it, so it might even reduce our,
Well, I think that's, I mean,
because they'd be paying into it.
I think the interest is, no doubt, no doubt.
All three communities.
And once I hit record, then
No doubt the interest is there, I think, but it just comes down to, let's see how many people are, how many communities are on board with it, and then we can start shaking out numbers.
We were, again, that budget.
Oh, is
committee,
it?
We were the only community that was willing to talk to him. And we did better by him than he expected. We got a better deal this year than he had last. You know, and as soon as I made them all look like idiots, and they also thought, contact my town manager, the fact that, because tell me Sabatis doesn't have the same needs we do. Really?
I paused it, right?
I appreciate that, because we're still high.
Yeah, unlike.
I haven't said anything.
You're on pause.
Probably don't even wanna hear my opinion.
Pause.
Come on now, Chris. I always wanna hear your opinion.
Mute. But I don't know if the pause works. I am really new at this.
Well, I hit the pause button, so.
So we'll blame you.
Yeah, exactly. That's all right. I've been blamed for other
You
things.
won't volunteer to help me again.
She goes back like this, she looks over, I can feel her head turn, she's like, I didn't switch your chair, but I'll enjoy this.
Oh, did I put her on the wrong spot?
No, you didn't, you put it in the right spot, Alan put it in the wrong spot.
There's an ugly chair in the room and it gets shuffled around.
Oh, that's
Don't
it.
get here last, you'll get it.
That's what it is. They always jump.
That's what it is. And it's that one right there.
Is the one what,
I can
Cassie?
see it from here.
It's the one that gives you pucker factor 5.
Whoa.
It gets you at the odd moment. You lean back for a second, next thing you know, the feet are hitting the bottom of the desk.
It's a trick chair. Sure is. I'm not afraid to take somebody else's chair if it lands on me.
Oh, I totally did. I'll own that tonight. I sat in it. Nope, not this one.
Not this one.
It's still on pause, so it worked.
Yes.
Well, the true test is when you put it on a DVD and see what it plays.
Yes. I won't be doing that one.
Yes, I would assume so.
All we can do is our best.
That's right. That's all we can do.
It'd be so much easier if there was like a remote.
Working order?
Yeah.
Working
To
order
start.
will go to designated fund balance, budget recommendation,
So I recruited Tracy, so I wouldn't have to.
future budget considerations.
Oh, we gotta work it out.
Actually, maybe the first thing we should do the comparison so we can see where
Where
we're
we're
at.
at now.
Whoa.
Yeah.
You're making a shuffle over here and I'm not
These are
paying
the building
attention.
projects.
Say that one more time?
So we'll do the fiscal year 18 budget comparison first.
I'm good with
Hi
that.
there.
Here somewhere?
Good, how are you?
There it is.
Yeah.
And then the fund balance sheet. One underneath that.
That one first.
Work's still going well?
Yeah, that one.
That one second.
Good.
Then budget recommendations.
That one third.
Then future budget considerations.
I don't ever see anything on the news, because I'm on him here by the time I get
This is the project list to add up to the 70,000 that's in
Back
budget
page.
on the chapter.
Did you get that, Mark? Were you paying attention?
Mm-hmm. These here, what the current.
No, it doesn't, because I don't have the school in there. I don't have.
Oh,
the
yeah,
school.
no,
What's the order we're
Good
looking for?
start, piece up.
Right there, man.
Okay.
It all flips. It's, yeah, 680 plus the 35, 524 will flip the increase, yeah. So if you add
So if we take,
add the 8667 and the 620, is your 9288 or something.
I got a new pedal bike, did I tell you?
we can go from 680 to 390, do what you're asking,
That's the oldest one I got.
So reduction down to
I
300.
got a guy's garage for 50 years.
by moving
It's a 1939 collegiate,
on the,
pretty cool, green, white.
Mhm.
these are.
by
So it's got a
moving,
little spring, it's got a spring seat.
everything
Cool. Girls bike
before
step
the
through.
public works.
My junk guys.
This stuff here will leave off.
My junk guys. So this,
I mean, you can
I got
do
it
it
for
later
nothing.
on, once we figure out how much.
this
more
stuff
we
here,
have.
I'd
Yep.
run over here, see if you wanted it.
If you draw a line
He come back in a few days, this man, that's everything.
after fire department,
That is.
anything below that,
I
we're
think
just
so, I
gonna
watched
defer
it.
it till later on.
Took some
But everything,
after fire department.
right, after fire
Steel
department,
wool
I
and
mean,
stainless. So that should be
to be determined later on.
later on.
But everything above it will
Pedals just
take
like
from
brand new.
unassigned fund balance.
Nice ties, hold air, the original fire.
Do you
stuff
ride
ties.
them?
That still means we're held around. Gonna be at the 380, 390 mark? They were black. We washed them off.
Yeah, cause if you take the 680, 785 and subtract the,
Being almost 80 years old.
so, well, you have to subtract everything on that page, actually.
Yeah, okay, that's what I was,
You subtract everything but from the unassigned fund balance, I'm just looking from the fire department up.
Version of a bike. I think bike, this kind of bike, mini bike, scooter bike, this. And they have one that's like
Gets us
this
through this
big,
year.
this tall one.
yeah.
And it gets you, if you take your 424 and add the 200 to
feel you.
it, for the overlay, you get 624, and all of the stuff I'm recommending goes 617, so it's underneath your 624.
Scares me.
Oh,
Before we get those to be.
They all good?
To fund balance in the future.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think,
spectacular.
Well, Justin's doing the, helping out with the unified track meet.
Yeah, that's today, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Thought so.
And John was supposed to go to practice, and then I was supposed to pick him
June
up, so
11th
he'd
will
be
make
with the
18
little
months.
ones, so I could come here, but never relate to us that he was helping with unified. So I show up and I'm like,
What's going on, dude?
dude, I have to be there in 15 minutes. What are you doing?
Yeah.
So I had no choice. I'm like, you need to go home. Like, and he's like, but I'm supposed to be helping out. I'm like, you didn't really. Communication's key.
I mean, it's a need,
Right.
but
Unless you get a ride home after.
Well, it's not even that. It's I had nobody to stay home with Xavier.
Oh, that's.
there's more needs that you need to do, I think you need to figure out what
So
you
had
do
he
with
had
that
just
in.
said at the beginning, I'm part of it, I would have found alternatives.
Right.
And the
I
other
could have
thing
brought him
is,
over to
as far as
Chris's house and
storage,
he could hang out
add on to
with
that building.
Marcia.
Right, right.
But at that point, it's like, I don't have time.
Yeah, it's too late. Can't make that happen on a dime. Can't stop on a dime. Make everything
The other one.
come together.
It's killing me every year.
I noticed a ton more traffic congestion at 5 o'clock in Elizabeth Falls.
Yeah.
And
Yesterday, it took me 15 minutes to get from the Big Dipper to the high school because it was standstill traffic.
the congestion of the state, it's weird spots. It's not like down by the, always by the Kennebec store, there's always a little bit of congestion. You always expect that to go over the hill, to go down. That's gonna happen. I expect that one. What I'm not expecting, and I'm seeing a lot more of, is that curve coming up the hill, where the stop sign coming off School Street is.
Yeah.
We did it in a way so we could add.
I'm talking like, I was coming here,
And that's what we should
at
do.
5:15, and there were 9 or 10 cars deep at that stop sign. And because it's not a light, you're at the mercy of whoever's there, however afraid they are to merge into traffic.
Right.
So then I go out and around, I go down side street, come out by the Volvo dealership, think I'll come up 196. As soon as I go to pull out, freaking traffic's backed up down the corner all the way to where I was like, forget this, I went down.
I'd go over
Cut
this
back
street, go
on.
across Wing Street, but your car won't survive it.
I went Wing Street. I went on Main and cut across Wing.
I get stuck in traffic down at the boat launch,
Yep.
all the way in.
The whole 196 corridor has gotten crazy. It
From
gives me
like,
It gives me 295 flashbacks sometimes. I'm like, I don't want any part of this.
it's always like around 5 o'clock-ish.
It's all the rush hour traffic.
Well, that, and you figure all the sporting events are getting out, practices are getting out.
Double-edged sword with, we have a fantastic complex now with a lot more activity around that. So it's gonna be a hub, especially in the springtime.
I just thought it was, okay, well, maybe it's just practices getting out, but you figure the middle school track is doing it with the high school track.
We good? Let's get this moving. I got too many smiling faces here. You Bobby, how you? I'm doing. How you doing?
What's going up first?
All right. For the working order in that regard. We're gonna go through the FY18 commitment comparison first, guys. Then we're gonna go through the unassigned fund balance discussion. We're gonna do the budget recommendations, future budget considerations, project list, and then open discussion for anything else that doesn't fall into any of those categories. The commitment comparison, just, this gives you the starting point where we're at before we begin the dialogue for tonight.
So, on the fiscal 18 commitment comparison, under the municipal budget, that line, it shows currently, with all the changes that you made from the first draft proposed budget, now we show an increase of $680,785, which is an 8.36% increase if you include the county increase of $35,524. It's an 8.36% increase over last year. I have not made any other changes to the other revenues, and I did at the bottom include the school funding as the council adopted. Now, once that goes through the referendum process, then I'll update it in the budget, but I'm not going to until that time. So that's our figure now that we're at, $680,785. That's what we're going to start and work downwards from. So the next page is the unassigned fund balance. Looks like this. So our starting amount, based on the change that we did to our fund balance policy, we feel we could spend $424,626 out of unassigned fund balance. We also have overlay that will be lapsed into undesignated fund balance to the tune of about $200,000. So if you add that to the 424, we have about $624,626 that we can spend. Currently, you've already committed $150,000 for the plow, $150 for 2 plow trucks, or $300,000 total, and you've committed $20,000 for the playground. My recommendation is to remove out of the budget the $50,000 that we put for the computer server upgrade. We already removed the $20,000 for the generator pad and infrastructure. I've removed that from the budget, but I'm recommending that you fund that through unassigned fund balance. We talked about the natural gas conversion. I didn't spell conversion right, did I? Conversion to the tune of about $23,704. That was never in the budget, but I think it's something you need to consider through unassigned fund balance. The town clerk high-density storage, we had taken that out of the budget. That's on that other list that you're going to look at in a few minutes. I recommend that you fund that through the unassigned fund balance. The police upgrades to the radio equipment, that is currently in the budget for $38,700, and I think that you should take that out of the budget and fund it through the unassigned fund balance. We talked about purchasing 2 police cruisers. We have 1 in the budget and 1 that's not budgeted, and that's why it's on this list to come out of unassigned fund balance. The fire department capital improvement, you've been doing $75,000 a year. We increased that in the budget to $150,000 this year because we know in the very near future we're going to be having to replace a fire truck. So that's why we increased it this year, but I propose, so that we can lower the burden on the taxpayer, is to take that $75,000 out of the budget and fund it through the unassigned fund balance. And then the last thing is the E.T. Smith Hose Company floor. That is not in the budget. It's not part of the $70,000 on Ryan's list. But it's something that does need to get done, and that's, again, is another one-time expenditure, and I propose taking that from unassigned fund balance. So if you add all of that up, that comes to $617,404, which is less than the $624,626. And then down at the bottom, we have some items that are in the budget right now. The Public Works heavy machinery for 100,000. What that was to start a capital reserve fund for future equipment purchases. And the same thing for the solid waste capital improvement. I think that we can defer that to another year and take that right out of the budget. Things that we need to look at in the upcoming budgets is the fuel pumps at the Public Works garage. That's gonna be approximately 225,000. We need to, do that in the next fiscal year, not this coming one, but the one after. We talked about the need for a new salt shed, so we need to be talking about that in the future. And now that we know the MDOT project is stalled a little bit, I removed that from the budget. And we can fund that either in the next fiscal year budget or the budget after, and I think we'll be fine. So that's where we came with that. And then I just talked about the budget recommendations. And then if you just go to the future budget considerations, these are the items that you had me put on a list to talk about. I'm sorry.
Let's get the
Sure.
action done on these, and it may free up some of the dialogue on the rest of it.
Okay.
I'd start right at the top. Computer server upgrade, $50,000. By funding this through the undesignated fund balance, it'll take $50,000 right off this year's, budget. Ryan, why don't you come sit in the hot seat for a second?
In the hot seat.
Why don't you just give us a quick rundown of what that project ultimately means and what the benefit is to be able to have it funded through the fund balance, please?
Yes, the server upgrade is actually the software component of it. The hardware was recently upgraded, but we didn't do the software part at that time based on cost. We looked at several alternatives. One was doing a subscription-based option for Office, and this, when you looked at it over a 5-year period, it was going to be much more expensive than just taking the $50,000, buy the software outright. That upgrades our server software, which is the actual, like your Windows 10 or whatever it is right now, but upgrades our server to 2012 or 13. And then it also upgrades all our Microsoft Office, including providing enough licenses to be able to do Outlook with the PD to get them onto the same lisbonme.org email domain and so forth.
Now you're our resident IT person, so does it meet the spirit associated with what we got going on for the fund balance?
I think that it's a one-time, and I think that when, if my memory comes back to me about this discussion that we had when we talked about this, by getting us upgraded to now, we were talking about what, like an 8-year life cycle? If we made the investment now, we could go 8, maybe 10 years tops.
I believe that right now we're running mostly 2007 Office, and I believe the server, I want to say is 2006 or 8.
So you're saying we're gonna forward to at least
10
13?
Yeah, it's,
Yeah.
I can tell you what. You can actually put the, what year it is, but it'd be the most recent, 2016.
So conservatively, you're saying yes?
Yeah, I know when we talked about subscription-based, I think the cost was substantially more, and that's why this was more of a Band-Aid to kinda, and I didn't want us to spend $50K and then 3 years down the road be in a spot where, hey, let's spend another $50K. If this is something that can carry us for another 5 to 8 years, I don't think it's a bad investment of resources, and we get to bring the fire department into the fold on the mail, so there's some value there in that. But I don't wanna supplant Ryan, or Brian has a better working knowledge of the system, but.
Basically, my recommendation is based on our IT support professionals. Their recommendation of the 3 options was option 3, which was the purchase the software outright.
As it relates to this budget, would you say yes or no?
Yeah, I'm a yay on those.
He's got the IT experience on that regard, and I'm not
Yeah, I
gonna.
think you can't afford to get too far behind in software. You get Microsoft starts patching the old stuff, and then you're vulnerable to hackers that.
Yeah, we can't afford, Not that we would ever consider that, and I'm sure the Microsoft stuff is solid, but we wanna be as close as we can to current, so we don't have to worry about any sort of, breach.
I have a motion. Who's the second?
I'll second that.
Everybody in favor of doing, funding that through fund balance, taking it out of the budget? All in favor?
Now this will come back to you at a regular meeting to vote on.
Oh, yeah, we can't do it here.
Can't.
Correct.
You can do a straw poll, but.
Straw poll, thank you.
You saw the hands. Preview of what this will look
That's
like
all right.
when it counts. Preview of what it looks.
Let the record show the, council chair was confused.
Not the last time.
Just today?
Won't be the last time tonight. Not gonna lie. All right, generator pad. That's already been, we just need to commit. I think everything we heard on that one there, everybody should be comfortable with funding that through fund balance. That was what we talked about, if I remember. All right. The natural gas conversion, that was something specifically we heard, for the Lisbon Falls fire. That's a full replacement based on something that was in the seventies? What was the
No,
date
I
of
think
the
it's early do you remember nineties? Early nineties?
But it is.
The boiler or something.
The
Yeah.
boiler needs to go, which is why the 18 on that.
Correct.
right?
The recommendation from the HVAC
Is a
company that we,
replacement.
is a replacement.
But the library is a retro to be able to
Burner
convert
only.
it to natural gas.
Yep.
Everybody comfortable with that step to be able to move forward on this?
Update.
We still don't know, Unitil still doesn't have a firm grip on when they would be able to provide us the service. They did indicate that if the town was able to do the digging in Union and Main Street and then pave the trench back in afterwards, that may get their numbers where they need to be so they could bring the natural gas now. But they don't have enough commitment along the way, or even beyond us being the sausage kitchen, to commit on their end, I guess is what I'm trying to articulate.
But acting on this, what you're talking about, we can at least get the 2 conversions that we need done? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, I mean, we would have the money in place to be able to do it whenever they are able to provide the service, depending
So
on
we're
how
setting
we
the
get
funds,
there.
we're setting the funds aside to work with their timeline.
Right. Yep, and I think the other part of it was, after talking to Unitil yesterday, is there any sort of support for for us doing any of that work in-house in order to be able to expedite that connection, or are we more content just to wait and see how the chips fall, if they can get enough other people along the way? They only have commitment right now for the Moxie building and the 2 Dr. Mike buildings at this point. So then they haven't got commitments from anybody else along the way. Everybody wants to connect, but no one's.
So what happens if they don't get any other
Yeah,
commitments?
Is this like a precursor to actually the dialogue with the $100,000, we dig the trench and they'll work within that kind of thing? Is that kind of?
I don't know what that dial.
In that regard, with the fact is they were gonna be laying, in the original Main Street project, there was a point in time, Mr. Bickford was actually touting the fact that if we opened it up and dug the trench, they were willing to work within that time frame of that project to be able to put that in there. Is it similar to that? It's just not as far?
This is more like the connection that we made to MTM and to I'm sorry, I can't remember the name of the place on Campus Ave. It was Campus Commons, with the Brunswick Housing Authority, where they didn't have enough.
Yep.
So we ended up paving, they did all the digging, and then we ended up just coming back and paving the trench. And then Brunswick Housing and the town split the cost associated with that effort, labor, equipment and materials. It would be more along those lines, where just providing natural gas, with the only commitment being the town of Lisbon for the library and the fire station, there's not enough supply there to offset the costs of them extending the main all the way to those 2 locations. So without commitments along the way, and I think the sausage kitchen is really the
Anchor.
kicker on the other side. I think if the sausage kitchen was on board, there may be enough support to get it, less out of, the cost to those that want it would be less.
So there's no guarantee that this would even be done within the next year?
The only guarantee would be is if the town was to commit to doing the digging and the paving, they seem to think that the numbers would then work, because they could take that part of it out of their investment and what it takes to provide the service. And that gets it down to now what it's gonna, because they still have to come behind all the buildings on Main Street, behind whatever's there now, Dr. Mike's and Drapeau's, and then the Cooperative Extension. Those folks could then connect, because the line would be going through there, but they don't have, at this point, we'd be jumping the gun a little bit, but we'd also be guaranteeing that we would have that connection by this winter, so, again, it's,
Are we only doing that for one side of the street, or does that benefit both sides of the street if they're from Main Street?
it gets them closer to doing the other side of the street, because the plan on their plan is to go behind all those buildings, come up Union, go right down Main Street.
Their plan,
Right.
their plan, I mean, the point that I'm making is that we do the trenching and that type of thing, I don't want somebody to come back and say, yeah, you did it for the left-hand side of the town, right there in that area, but you screwed the people on the right-hand side, and that will be what they remember.
I'm just listening to what you're saying, and I'm thinking that I like the scenario where we get more commitments before we commit any money anywhere to anything. That's just me.
Right.
Not speaking for anybody else, but in hearing what the pushback from Unitel is on this, saying, hey, we don't have as many commitments as maybe we thought we were gonna get, and therefore that, from a cost perspective, we need you to put a little bit more skin in the game. I'm gonna balk at that. I just think that, you know what, let's just see how many people we can get involved and get to say, yeah, I'm a solid commit. Cause then it gets Unitel to kinda come in and say, hey, okay, we get a lot of people here that wanna do this.
Right.
And then we're talking about some numbers that are more favorable to us.
So,
And maybe a better scenario too, to try to get it both sides of the road and lined up with the MDOT project, MD.
Well, and based on their discussions too, I mean, the Dr. Mike's, obstacle was the biggest one they needed to cross at first, because they needed to have those first three accounts they needed in order to make the connection in 196, because that was where the biggest expense was. Now that they're in, off 196 and in, on private property.
Right.
I mean, a lot of that's a much easier installation. So, and they haven't done enough due diligence at this point, because they were waiting to get that part. Now that they have it there, now they can go out and try to, sell it more, but that hasn't happened yet. And I guess the biggest thing for us is maybe what you said is if you're comfortable committing the money to be used to upgrade those two locations, when and if it becomes available, I don't know if that's out of the undesignated, if that's makes the most sense, I don't know. Unassigned, excuse me.
Yes.
is there, so if they don't have anybody else that's interested, are they even going to pursue this?
I don't believe they will extend it further until they have enough customers to do it. And, because it's the same deal, it's either, if the town really wants it, we can pay, they have to do this some sort of math.
Right.
They figure out that, after 5 years, they're gonna be able to pay back what their investment was based on the consumption that we would have at those two locations. Right now, we don't have enough consumption to pay back what it's gonna cost to invest that, what it's gonna cost for them to get the supply to us. So, in order for them to still bring us the supply, we would have to pay the difference of what that is. The option is to pay it monetarily or to
In work.
in-kind services.
Now, that would be a difference. You mentioned we did it on campus?
Correct.
What was the cost for that for the town?
I wanna say it was less than $10,000, but it was strictly paving only.
But that's something, it's internal, you have your guys actually doing it.
Right.
And then it's part of our paving contract, so.
I mean, with this, it would be, honestly, for this effort, it would be, we would dig a trench, gas main's 3 feet in the ground, and you come up Union Street and down Main Street, we could do it, rent a little excavator, because it's never a big trench when they put in there, but, again, it's the time from our guys doing it, and the expenses that we have, and then I just don't know what, I haven't had enough time to be able to figure out what the
One of the things
impact
that
would
you
be.
did clarify in saying this the second time around was that the intention here is to actually fund the conversion for the two locations. We're talking about incurring $10,000 worth of cost to be able to make this retrofit for the fire and library work for the town, because we want to convert over to natural gas. That's the piece that I'm getting. Is the fact that in that regard, it's $10,000 out of your budget, and the rest, if we move forward on this, being recommended from the undesignated. it's not about one side of the street or the other, it's actually doing what we're trying to do
Right.
to benefit the community.
And I don't know if it's $10,000 or not, just so
I-
I.
You gave me, hey, I'm not putting you out there, but you gave me a figure for what was on the other.
Yeah.
That's where I was going with that. Is anybody, anything new on that? Tracy? I didn't see it, sure.
Just to kind of echo with Ryan, Scott Carpenter with Unitil and I have been in conversations in regards to the businesses downtown. There has been a lot of interest with the businesses, and I gave them all of the contact information for them to reach out to those folks. But especially going across the other side of the street, they all will have that opportunity. So, you know, everybody in that area will have that opportunity to sign on or not sign on. When you look at the hair salon, Tangles, and of course the laundromat right beside of it, I know that Christine was very interested in it as well. So we also, when Diane and I was at the Cooperative Exchange annual meeting and dinner, I mentioned to Tori that we're looking at the natural gas, and again, that they had some interest. So I think, you know, as they get more into, as Unitil kind of starts reaching out to those other folks, I think it sounds like they had to get the other information for Ryan or whatever, but they haven't done their outreach yet. I think that more folks will be probably signing on, as well as some of the businesses will have the opportunity. There are some programs out there to help them with the cost of their conversion.
Cool.
Okay.
Little minor windfall from a delayed MDOT project is that we could have this dialogue, because you wouldn't have a moratorium on opening up that street afterwards to be able to do this conversion. Anybody unopposed to this?
The only thing I would say is that if we don't have the commitments that we need, I mean, because my understanding is that all we're doing is saying we're gonna earmark this money to do this. We're not moving forward on it until we
Right.
get some more feedback from Unitil. So the worst possible case scenario is we could come back, and this is still gonna be an unassigned fund balance, it's just earmarked for this project.
Exactly.
If something comes back from Unitil, it's not favorable for us, we could always go ahead and then
Right.
grab that up and apply it to, and maybe something that
It's
doesn't get the nod
It's
tonight.
25 or something else.
Okay, good, that's
So
fine
it's
by
not
me
gonna
then,
go
yeah.
anywhere.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
not
no,
going
it's
anywhere.
just,
No, it's just gonna be earmarked.
and we're not moving forward until we get the more detail from Unitil, so, yeah.
Cool.
That's right from me.
Make it so. High-density storage, we talked about this. We took it out of the budget for that reason. We just need to commit the funds. Anybody not on board with that? All right. Police radio. We have you, sir. The one piece on this is, it originally came before us, we asked the chief to actually do some more research on additional costs, if this was going to address the issues, or if there was gonna be more funds associated with this. The key piece that I bring you guys up to speed on is the amount, the budget originally, I think, was 33.5 or something, and it went up, so
38.7, yeah.
in that regard, you have the floor, sir.
Well, yes, originally it was 33.5, and what we did was we reached out to Dirigo Radio, asked them to, run a test to make sure that this was gonna solve our issues, and it did not. So we reevaluated the situation. They did a number of tests over the last few weeks, and so now the price has gone up. They want to continue to upgrade our equipment to public safety grade equipment, and they want to add a receiver onto a water tower on this end of town. It's the water district's water tower. We reached out to the water district last week, spoke with Bill Alexander. He's been more than helpful. I can't say enough good things about the water district right now. And he met with his board last night, and we're in agreement, at least verbally, that they will allow us to put a receiver up on this end of town, which should assist greatly. Again, that we need to make sure that it's not going to affect any of their daily operations, and they already have 2 antennas on there. But short of that, we'll also have a receiver on that end of town, which, again, Dirigo is the experts here. I'm relying on them. But they have been doing a number of tests, and they believe that this will solve our issue. I should state that the new estimate does not include a cement pad up on Route 9. at the tower right now where we have some equipment. The new equipment we'd need would be a little larger, so they're suggesting we have an enclosure up there. And they stated that they didn't think it would be cost effective for us, for them to do the concrete pad. They thought that if we asked Public Works very nicely, that they might be willing to do the concrete pad, and it probably would save us a little money. It also does not include any electrical work that the water district may require up on the tower, but that, as of right now, appears minimal.
Concrete pad. I need just a pricing estimate, because that obviously is not in the budget anywheres. $100 a yard. Concrete. I don't know size.
Probably talking like a 3x5 pad, if that.
Yes.
We'd have to try to tag that onto some other project. If we do, well, I guess if we do that more.
Bag it.
So we talking a $5,000 item in the budget, or 10,000?
No.
Yeah, no, yeah, it was way too quick, way too quick.
Ryan, you're confused, sir. What I didn't want to spend is $38,700 to actually not complete the job. That was what I was actually going after. What's the kick to the budget?
It'd be based on the size of the time, it'd be minor.
Okay. Okay.
That's what man hours.
Or less, yeah.
Labor.
So I'm hearing let Ryan eat the $500 or 5,000.
38.
That's what I was hearing.
So 38.7 isn't
no,
the
no,
number
no,
then,
no.
what's the number?
Okay.
That's,
That, we will circle back around to that item on the budget piece of it, by all means. I don't think that's fair to leave that out there, for sure.
Is this the
Go ahead,
latest
sir.
number right here?
that's, yeah, the 38.7 is the number plus whatever the concrete would cost us.
Oh, so that's the only add-on then?
Yes,
And
and
the wiring.
any wiring issue that's unexpected up on the water tower.
I know with that pole, we don't know when that land it's on, it was put on in the right of way there, so is there issues with building on that space? I mean, you know. Right.
To be honest with you, that's a good question. This has all happened in the last couple of weeks, so it's,
Somebody owns that land, I know who it is.
I don't know how wide, I don't know if the fire chief knows the right of way.
Don't use, will just stay in fund balance.
You were within 5.
Yeah.
We were well within
Throw some money at
Because
the
electrical
electrical.
isn't gonna cost
1,300.
you that much, right?
So between the-
$1,300 on
Yeah,
top of
between
it,
the
if you go
electrical-
40, and it's $1,300, if you don't use it, you just put it back. That easy. Wouldn't that make more sense?
Yeah, no, it's there, it makes sense to me.
I heard it there, I heard it here, and I heard it there.
ready to
so
go.
in that regard,
Ready, set?
40.
40
How do
grand.
you feel about
is-
that?
40 grand.
Outstanding,
Take
thank
it
you.
out. Take 38.7 out of the budget, because we'll see that piece as well.
Right.
Balance, bada bing.
Second cruiser, we heard his dialogue when he talked about the front line, moving cars off the front line and trying to jumpstart that now. The intention for the benefit of the community is the fact that we are not leasing 3 years worth of vehicles at any given time, putting the cost of the cruisers in the budget at a savings, was it $1,900 a vehicle? Is that the figure
Yeah,
I
it's
saw?
like 1,800, well, yeah, pretty close to 19.
Right.
That's the,
1,900 a
that's
vehicle
the debt
is
service.
what we're saving.
It was,
Yeah.
wasn't it 1898.61?
That's it.
Are you reading that, or do you have one of those brains?
Have one of those brains, elephant memory.
I think you're gonna say BS, cause it's right here. in the
Yeah.
In point that makes.
Reading it to you.
Exactly, yeah. Unbelievable as my children, exactly. The true benefit to anything we're talking about, everybody here knows, is 3 years out when we get those off the long-term debt piece, because he still has 3 years on the cruiser we bought this past year to, 1 previous and 1 year left on the remaining. But when we get out of that cycle, that will truly start to come back to benefit. Anybody opposed to doing just as we suggested?
Now, my question is, do we still have one in the budget, or?
Yes.
Okay, so it's one in the
Yes,
budget,
this
and
is
we
the
fund
addition.
one out of.
Fund
that's
balance,
what you're saying, okay, yes.
Initially, Chief had budgeted 2, I think it was, we were talking like a
Yes.
2-1-2, and then we came back
Yes.
and we realized maybe that wasn't it, so this was a way to kinda start that cycle again, but do it in a way that wasn't,
So how are we rotating it from here on out after?
Next year, he would have one available to him, and then he would pick up the two the following year, 3 years out.
Gosh, how many vehicles do you guys need?
Many as it takes.
keeping in mind, yeah.
You guys are
keeping in
gonna be Freddie Flintstoning it
What
pretty
is-
soon.
Remember the original model we were talking about is one cruiser every 5 years. That is clearly not going to work, but in that regard, getting 5 years out of a cruiser by finding that the first year and a half, they may be frontline vehicles, and then they're moved to a lesser capacity to get that life out of it. And the first being is whatever CID car that ultimately ends up with Dennis's new ride or whatever. I don't care what you give him, quite frankly. Keep the ones that work for you, and the fact is, one leaves, instead of trading it, becomes his new
Fair enough.
Bluesmobile.
He's the only ridiculous showing up for a job in a smart car.
He asked for the Hummer, so I'd give him the smart car.
He does realize that thing leaks, right?
Careful what you ask for, you might get it, right?
These meetings are recorded.
Okay, so we're good with those, so those,
Next.
moving right along.
Thank you.
that
Officers
was
are very
good, Chief.
appreciative, by the way.
Thank you.
Did that get bumped up
yeah.
to 40?
Yes.
It did. Oh, yeah. I remember it was that
The
school.
radios did, yes.
Yeah.
Vicky used to ride, try to take it to school.
The fire department capital improvement. Anybody ill opposed to doing as we suggested to address, was it, how many years out for the first one that we're gonna have to pay for?
Not this 18 budget, but then the 19.
That's what I remembered, so it would get us to like the midpoint of that part, so 150 this time around, 150 in the next budget cycle, we will be dangerously close to what he needs to be able to replace it.
Cause yeah, once we make that replacement, I think if my memory serves me correctly, we're tapped.
I'll get up and not be the lazy dude, sorry.
No. That's on me. If I remember right, it was like a $600,000 investment.
Potentially, yes. And what we need to look at, which we'll have the meeting afterwards, after we're done with budget this year, to be able to really lay those out, is to show you, do you want to diminish that whole account by purchasing apparatus out of it? Or do we want to supplement and then find alternate funding to go along with the supplement? So, it's up to what you guys want to do, or as the council wants to do, as actually saying, is it gonna be a refurb and replacement account? Is it gonna be just a refurb account, or is it, gonna stay in that?
What do we have it as right now?
Right now, it's refurb and replacement, but it's been underfunded, so it's been hard for the replacement.
Yeah, one of, okay, Rain Man, one of those figures is on the schedule.
139.
139,757. I can read it.
Is the current,
Yeah, I can't
see
remember
that
if
one?
that's
I did.
with the designations or
Got the
not.
reaction, I was
I
looking
don't
forward to it.
remember. If
and
that's-
then the other play in that is that a year right after that, engine two's starting to
Right.
come up. So we're
Right.
kind of a back-to-back thing, and then we're gonna have some time to rebuild that account. by
Which is
having
why
this
we
done.
have the dialogue associated with what we're doing, but the intent of this is to address it in the budget cycle now, to not have such a hit to the community.
We're also looking at grant opportunities.
Correct.
See if we can try to apply for grants to replace one of them.
Like that?
They do have Fire Act grants. They have been diminished over time here, so getting apparatus is a little bit more difficult, but we're definitely gonna go for it and see what we can come up with to offset that, so.
Ultimately, doing this puts us in a spot when we get to that replacement vehicle, not this next budget cycle, but the following. Where we can make the decision whether or not we wanna go ahead and utilize the entire, amount that's in there, and then be grossly underfunded for the next one that comes up the following budget cycle, or get creative with how we're gonna fund this thing.
Correct. You also have to look at, after we lay that out, you also have going into the immediate one of the benefit if we wanna go for do two of them right off the bat. So that'll be an option, but there again, you guys will be the funding, and I'd have to throw bond rates and everything else out there at that point, because we won't have the money for two, but.
Those two for
It may be
one.
cheaper too.
Well, a 2-for-1, that's refurbishment, so that's like half-life, is that what we're talking about there?
Right, a refurbishment, we send our trucks out at a half-life, which is typically 10 to 12 years, so that they're gonna give us another 10 to 12 years.
Right.
So,
So that's what we're looking at, is possibly saying, if we do both these, the 2-for-1, we could probably get a better deal for doing this half-life on both of these right now, we still have to get creative on financing.
No, they're building 2 new ones.
Two new ones. These are actually the replacements of.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Right, I was thinking they were half full. I'm wrong.
Good.
Clear as mud.
Good, good,
How do you really feel?
Yeah, good. It's good. It's good.
Hear his voice crack?
I could.
It's a secondhand puberty right there. He's not allowed to answer the phone, and we don't get pizzas, I can tell that. Yeah. All right.
So you're all set with that one for fund balance?
Are we good with this? It is in the budget at this point. I think it should come from, because we're setting the funds aside to be able to have for an intended purpose.
Correct.
Thank you.
Which was established in 2004 by the Board of Selectmen. Thank you.
Funded correctly the first year.
First and second year were good. Third year, we.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
What's next? Plow trucks are done, rig playground's done.
Hose.
Who's gonna talk about the hose company floor, cause we've not heard anything on this one.
Ryan?
Rock, scissors, paper, shoot!
Let's go. E.T. Smith Hose Company's floor, for anybody who's actually been in that building, it's been over the last 60 years, there's been 3 additions on that building, and there's 3 different floors in that building, which if you walk in there, you kind of see them and everything else. So the concern was where that major drain is in the old section where Engine 1 and Squad 3 are. There's a main floor drain there that's pretty big. That floor holds water in places. It's lower in some places, lower in the other, higher in the other. So with holding water like that and having members come running in to go to fire trucks, lots of times we have guys with ankles higher than their heads as soon as they hit the floor type of thing. So it's unsafe, and it has been. Drainage, there is no drainage in there. It doesn't drain towards where it's supposed to go. It drains. We have a hole in the wall actually that is used as a drain sometimes so that we can push water out of it. So it's been ongoing. Deputy Chief Leclerc has actually been stressing that to me. Actually got a hold of Ryan, and I were together, and Deputy Chief came in and mentioned it. So Ryan was like, let's go take a look at it. And we were able to really point out the issues with it. And so Ryan was able to put it on a priority list to be able to say, yeah, we need to kind of do that. So that's the basis of it, right?
Yeah, and we don't have quotes or anything. Basically, kind of picked a number based on, it was about $10,000 when we just had the floor put in for the new Public Works addition. And being roughly the same size, I beefed it up a lot because it's gonna have to be removal of the existing floor, and then whatever we need to do for some drain work, and then pouring of a new floor, which in the garage is gonna be a little more difficult than if the addition wasn't built when we did that. So again, this may be a shot in the dark number without, again, having a formal quote, but trying to gauge the interest in the council before we move forward. We can put together an actual bid.
Again, this is nowhere in the budget, so we're setting funds aside based on this estimate. It comes in higher, we deal with it later. If it comes in lower, we can move on the project.
It's never lower. Never.
I'm hoping we said Snowball's chance in the dark.
And that's doing the old section, because Engine 2's bay.
I took the square footage of the existing building. It's probably more. The square footage I did was probably more, because I think
Okay.
that included the office piece.
Okay.
So how many floors are you really looking at doing that?
One is just gonna be bigger than the current one.
I
It's not gonna
think
be
we
three.
could get away, as if he estimated that way, Engine 2's bay is actually the newest floor of them all. That's in good shape. If we just did the old section where Engine 1 and Squad 3 and the boat sit, that section, less the 240 square feet that were actually in the meeting room, which we don't have to do, I think you'll fall well within the parameter of what his estimate was there.
You just don't know how much the demo's gonna be.
Right.
And I'd like to say that the fire department, but
I was
where
gonna
truck
suggest
6 is sitting right now, we did that floor. I tied all the steel in that floor with the guys. We demolished everything in there. We're not gonna do that again, I'm sorry.
It's not on your radar.
We're firemen, we're not.
You didn't have
How'd the
fun?
floor,
Everything's very well.
how'd the floor come out?
Floor came out awesome, I guess. Where the ladder sits.
We good with moving forward with this one? We're setting the funds aside to be able to have the discussion.
Yes. Yep.
Perfect.
Safety issue.
All right.
That was
Um,
easy.
You wanna continue on the same page?
Yep. And at the bottom, my suggestion is to pull out the heavy machinery, 100,000, and the 30,000 for the solid waste capital improvement. Those are both capital improvement amounts to set aside so that we
Agreed.
have funds later on to
We
do
spent
this
enough
stuff.
money on this, man, this year.
It's not targeted to any specific thing. And I talked to Ryan about it, and we agreed with that.
You've had luck 2 years in a row. Don't push it.
You know, the issue facing us moving forward is we need to do those fuel pumps. So we need to make sure we've got money to do those later on. And obviously, the salt shed is a concern. And then eventually, we've got to come up with the rest of the MDOT money.
The drop dead date that we have to react to those pumps.
I believe it was 2019, I couldn't tell you what month.
So this was something we will be dealing with next year.
Yep.
I like the two cuts.
Oh, I have a question.
Sure.
Have we addressed most of your big item concerns?
Been very generous, yes.
So what other ones are you gonna throw at us,
Pumps.
other
Well, I
than the
mean,
pumps?
I think you have a pretty good idea of what the
sidewalk
needs
one.
are. Well, yeah, depending on how the second round goes.
Yep.
If that's the direction that we're proceeding. And then, the other item, which I didn't see on here, I can't remember where we talked about it, was the 385, no, there it is, I'm sorry. It is on the sheet.
It's on your list. It's in that $70,000.
You sit in the chair,
Town.
Cassie, you wanna explore that now?
Hmm?
You sit in the chair, you wanna explore that now?
What, future?
Yeah.
Well, I'm just trying to,
No, it's, we're on the topic, you wanna explore it now
Yeah.
and take it off? Is anybody still opposed to taking these two items off the budget from this year? That gives you at least that piece.
Yeah.
Machinery and solid waste.
Yeah,
Yeah.
both, yes, the 130 combined. Let's talk sidewalk now, because I know that kind of came at us sideways the last council meeting, which is why we put it here. What is the intent, council? Well, obviously that meeting we talked about actually allowing him to be able to go out to future bid. Future bid is, in my opinion, the 50 grand that's in the budget this year is underfunding that. If we are to take the one bid that was out there at face value. Is that a fair assessment?
Even if you average the two of them together, it's still gonna be,
Right.
you know, between 50 and 70.
Right. And I heard a circuit breaker number from the two of you folks, because you did some preliminary numbers, that when you hit 60 grand, it's cheaper to actually do it in-house, and then we're not actually benefiting at all by moving forward on this topic. That's still the same?
Right, because you could hire a full-time person that you could dedicate to that one piece of equipment in the winter, and then also help with, the rec department in the summertime, and the parks, and then whatever in between. The only other additional cost is upgrading that machine that you have now. You'd have to get a new blower, right?
You talked about that.
And then something out, you know.
Yeah, you
You
guys,
wouldn't have to
you guys were
replace
talking
it,
about
but I
that on
think
the
you
sidewalk.
could.
What'd
That
be
was
the
a
work-
limp along
What's
kind
the
of thing.
workaround of that?
Lower and then the next.
You could potentially do that, I mean,
First of all, you have to find somebody qualified that's actually gonna show up every day and do the job.
That's why
Because
you
we've
want
tested
to-
a lot of
why
people
you
in the
need somebody
4 or 5
full-time.
winters it's been here, and nobody seems to like it. Nobody.
So,
But if you're,
and
what about the impression the fact is that you're hired for that intention, is the fact is this is what your job during the winter is going to be?
there were some guys hired for that, this is your job for the winter.
No, this, yes,
Okay?
yes.
Again, you guys, I hear it from everybody that's been in
No,
it
no,
just
no, I know
about.
you do, I know you do, I know you do. And that's why I don't want to diminish any of that in that regard is,
It's gonna be tough for you to find somebody that's actually gonna seat that all winter long.
We can't even find truck drivers, operators, period.
right.
We started on the top with the guy in there, and the last guy that was in there was the bottom. Alright, so,
So maybe you just wanna do away with that idea and just try to put
I
the
would
money in
prefer,
the fund?
given the option, I'd prefer, when's the deadline for the budget adoption?
End it 27th, I think, of June, it's right, it's towards the end of June.
I would,
Public hearing is you'd have to have it probably by then, because you're not gonna have me
20th.
adopt something with the public not hearing it before, or not expect it to be beat up through social.
and I could tweak the one that we put out the first time with some more details based on preferably your input, and then have it turned around in time that we could have that information before the 20th.
Just set a budget. I would rather go that route, because to Councilor Brunel's point, the fact is, we set a budget, and then that sets your bids too.
I don't wanna sidetrack us all that much, but I do wanna ask a question, and I probably should have drilled down when we talked about this before. Since this piece of equipment now that we have seems to be just an absolute bear to operate, and that.
as a sidewalk snow blower,
Right.
as a sweeper and possibly a sander or something, it's a good piece of equipment. It's the fact that when you hook that blower up to the front of it and you cut somebody loose,
Even
again,
the, even the most qualified.
even the
people
most
are-
qualified guys,
Quite
even the most
honestly, it's
qualified
less-
guys getting beat up.
It's less the equipment too than it is, I mean, the sidewalks there's so many, it'd be nice if the sidewalks were all
Of course.
wide, but
Yeah.
they
Absolutely.
are narrow, the machine, in some
obstructed.
instances, the machine is literally the exact width
Yep.
of what they can get between. So, and then
Telephone
you,
poles in the middle of some of the sidewalks.
So
Fire hydrants.
Some of the things I'm hearing right now, just
Again,
I want-
yes.
I'm thinking from if I'm sitting at home hearing this, and we're saying we can't keep somebody in there, I want us to kind of qualify what some of the challenges these folks are, because we're getting our most seasoned qualified professionals, like you said, jumping in there, and they're like, yeah, I don't want no part of this thing.
No part of it.
So it's kind of climb down the ladder slowly, we get somebody who's just kind of like, all right, new guy, we're gonna train you, well, here's what the training looks like, and then we're putting you in there, and then even though you're giving them training, they're still going out and they're encountering all these obstacles, if somebody who's,
it's usually the worst worst possible time too.
right.
Middle of the night,
They-
you know.
So there's
You were-
all
you were
kinds of,
available
there's
on
all
Saturday.
kinds of visual restrictions along with, experience restrictions, the things that just challenge them in general. So I think that we're saying here is that even though we get to that $60,000 threshold that you mentioned, well, should we start considering it in-house? I think from a stress level and anxiety and if it's somebody else's worry that they're gonna be careful because it's their equipment. They're gonna take their time, they're gonna learn the nuances, so if we accept, I know we talked about a multi-year.
We had a very good, the town didn't really, I think sometimes that some of the people that were running the town at the time didn't really have a good grasp of the people that we had cleaning the sidewalks. And how long that family had actually been doing the sidewalks, and what an spectacular job they did.
Right.
We lost something there that we shouldn't have,
Right.
and I'm not sure that you can get it back. But it was budgeted through the town for how many years before we got rid of it? 1968, I think it was.
Yeah, so-
Okay, from 68 until
I don't see
5
how
years
we're
ago, I
down, so we
mean,
have that number somewhere.
do your, right, I don't have it there, but I do have it in my head somewhere.
No, I
Long
agree.
time, okay?
Right.
So, again, if you get somebody that's qualified, and as you said, in their own equipment, and you offer them a multi-year deal, as we said, or as one of the per se qualified people did, was ask if they could do a multi-year. And if you was to hang that back for somebody for a multiple year, you would find somebody that could afford to buy that piece of equipment and then love it, because this is X amount of money every year for 5 years, and if I do a great job, maybe I'll get another 5-year contract.
And
Do you know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely.
That's what you're, again, I'd rather go back that way,
because again, insurance liabilities, you can't keep nobody in that seat.
Those
Can't.
nuances that Ryan was talking about and that you talked about every sidewalk is different. So somebody
So
makes a-
many, there's so many of them in this
five-year
town.
commitment Or whatever, multi-year commitment, someone makes a multi-year commitment to buy the equipment, and then year one, they know, hey, this is gonna be the year I'm probably gonna I'm gonna break even if I'm lucky, probably lose a little bit, cause I gotta learn how to do it. But once they become efficient, and they know what they're doing, and they understand what's the best time to be dropping that machine down, less traffic, less people to deal with, and they're gonna get better at it, so by year 5, they're coming on the good end. So, and for us, it's a win, because we get what we need, which is, we need to have these areas cleared by this time every day, and we can target things, set expectations. I'm in that camp because it sounds like we've had nothing but trouble, and I'd rather see Ryan be able to have the ability to not field phone calls from people saying, why the hell is my sidewalk not plowed, or I just watched this guy run into a fire hydrant, or
And I
something
think
else.
that Ryan and I would agree with that. If we could get somebody, if we could contract it out, that's the way we'd wanna go. But we also wanted you to know the other option too.
Right.
Awesome.
What do
When
you-
it gets
what do
up
you
to
need
that
from
amount of money.
us?
I mean, I guess we're talking multi-year.
Yeah.
Are we
We heard
throwing
12, we
it?
heard 12 occurrences,
Right,
we heard number of inches, what else do you need?
Well, that's what I'm curious about.
12 occurrences and we pay à la carte after, or?
But what's an
talking-
occurrence?
Yeah, first of all, I'd like to, again, I'm not gonna refer back to the family that did it for X amount of years, but there was no stipulation in there, they did it, period.
Exactly.
The
And
agreement.
they didn't wait for somebody to call them and say, hey, man, I think there's 2 inches out here, you better get out here. They were doing it. I mean, they didn't do, again, it's one of those services that we lost that,
We'll never regain that.
So, let's just say, do we wanna try to, instead of using the number that we saw on that one multi-year, maybe go around, and I know it's more work, and I'm sorry for that, Ryan, but maybe go around and see if somebody else, I know you probably even see if there's any comparables, anybody else doing this for any other communities?
Most of the other communities do it all themselves. I mean,
Right.
that was the feedback, because when I called Auburn to find out, and they were
Auburn
just.
wants us to be the guinea pig, right?
So you
He was
say,
interested to find out what it was gonna cost.
you say occurrences, are you talking like, okay, 12 snowstorms, and then after that we pay for each?
Yeah.
The one
Yeah,
thing,
no,
I guess
no,
we can make it
it's
clear
Mother
by just
Nature.
saying-
I mean, we could get
Like I said,
15, we
right,
could
like I
get
said,
30.
if you get 3, I say the same thing, if we get 3,
Right.
do we get some back?
I agree with
I'm
that.
not about that, you know, man, if it's snowing and it's.
We live in Maine.
Correct.
We can put in-
Especially, there should be more precedence during a business, during Monday through Friday, definitely, that you know that you gotta be out there getting them sidewalks clean.
which is why the other contract that we had no stipulations, I
Correct.
think in that regard, is the fact is the price that he gave you for a 5-year deal,
Yeah.
was the fact is he knew he was inheriting all that baggage on him.
This is not just for snow removal, this is for salting and sanding, so if we have a
Oh,
bunch
it's the
of
whole
freezing
ba-
rain and ice and snow,
Yeah, yeah,
they're
yeah.
still gonna wander out there and drop sand down to make sure.
Oh.
And I don't want somebody to just be like, oh, okay, well, let's rack it up.
There's a whole lot of what
I mean,
ifs.
you could
but-
have a winter like you had 2 years ago where we didn't have anything, but
I'd
you're
feel
still
my
gonna
s-
pay the
Period.
contract price, so.
Period, it's
Right.
contract is a contract, the
Yeah.
winter's the winter.
I mean, they're
If
gonna
you don't think,
ma-
if you don't think that it's plowable and we do, and we make the call, you're doing it.
And that's
I
the
mean,
way the
that's-
agreement was written. It was,
Yeah.
they go out with the direction of the town, and that's the way it's been, I mean, at basically the conclusion of each storm is when
Correct.
they were notified. The previous private contractor, it's the way that it was handled in-house. It was as soon as, because they start on 196, as soon as they're done plowing 196, they'll set them free, because they don't wanna start snow blowing the sidewalk, have him come back through cleaning up after the fact and fill it back in. So it is,
Right.
it's not gonna be, during the storm type of thing. This is, as part of the contract, there was, you show up, you plow it or snow blow it, depending on whatever you need to do, depending on how much snow is there, at the behest of the,
Well, let's put a stipulation in there. If you guys have to go out, they have to go out. There, done deal.
Well, you didn't hear what he had to say, but, cause he said they go after. Again,
And she's saying in that regard is if he's going out, in
If
that regard.
P-
no,
if
you're
it doesn't
fine.
matter
Public-
how much we do, then it's,
Right.
if we're out for a sanding event,
Yes.
be prepared to be notified to come
Right.
in to do a
Correct.
salting or a sanding event.
If they have to be called out to go and do something, then they're gonna have to go out.
And that's easy enough, I mean, that, if that's the case, then it's very easy for me to, tomorrow,
Yes.
advertise a new RFP, include multi-year deal, and you own sidewalks in Lisbon from the time it starts snowing and whenever till the time it stops snowing in the spring.
5
Yep.
years from now.
Let's see, and let's see what kind of pricing we get
Correct.
back. Yeah.
Correct.
What kind of pricing we get back.
'Cause then we gotta make some decisions.
Okay, fair enough.
You needed to hear that. All right, now, her question was, anything else that we haven't heard other than that wrinkle that came out last meeting? We talked about the fuel pumps. The fuel pumps need to be done next year. Salt shed went from the number one priority to actually sliding down to a number two. Anything else out there?
You're still gonna have more MDOT work as well.
Oh, yeah, no, just, well, looking at.
Not just Main Street, I'm talking, we've got 196 from Capitol Ave to Main Street is in the work plan already
Right.
as a project, so, I mean, just,
One of the things that we've had two budgets that have been extremely productive to this point. With the asphalt pricing, pave it. The fact is, this has been the first time in recent memory you haven't been tethered based on the financial constraint. It's just there's so many other out there because the infrastructure is in need for a variety of reasons, which is why we did the bonding for the projects that we're working on, which is why we're pursuing. Where I was going with that is, who knows what next year may be, maybe the fact is we have to commit $100,000 for the MDOT piece of it. We may take what we actually have off that figure for pavement. In that regard, I'm hopeful that isn't the case, but it may be the reality because it comes at the expense of everything else that we're trying to accomplish within the community.
well, and along those lines, if it's all right to interject a little bit, from the paving standpoint, a little bit leery on, we're still trying to figure out which roads are the priorities. But also the idea of, is there gonna be a lot of kickback if we don't pave until the spring? You know, you're budgeting, you know, for July to June. I'm a little apprehensive about with what we already have on the books for this year. And then you know, we're still cleaning up last year's projects.
Right.
And then, you know, to turn around and especially if we do a bunch of streets that have water and sewer utilities in them, to be able to have enough time, and even you know, drainage, stuff, to be able to have enough time to get iron moved up and down. And then, I mean, in the past, I mean, like this year, the paving, the pricing was in the spring, I mean, in summer, we carried through, I mean, we did the transfer station this spring out of that last contract, so. I guess I'm just trying to gauge the support or direction the board would prefer. Do you wanna see the hot top go down this this summer, or if we get things prepped and then plan on paving in the spring, is that gonna be acceptable as well?
Personally,
What roads are?
I don't give a damn if it's on your priority list that it actually gets to when you can get to, cause it's still only one of our PW departments to go around.
And it goes from July 1 to June 30th, doesn't it?
Yep. I'm just, you know, in
Yeah,
the
I
past,
don't-
in the past, we've tried to,
I mean, you're still in the same year.
right, in the past, though, they've always tried to push it out
Yeah.
for that, because, I mean,
Best of intentions,
Right.
what's it getting us, right? You still have a list of projects that's longer than the day is long for the people that we
Yes.
have on staff.
so, I'm just trying to gauge.
No, and that, we did our part to set aside the funding, you're doing your part to put it logistically in play. That's what I'm communicating.
What roads are you looking at?
The Lisbon map.
I think it's safe to say.
We've got a bunch in
Hey,
gross
hey,
development.
Ward 2.
Yeah.
Ward 2.
I think it's safe to say we have faith in your ability to plan your schedule on how you think it best works and is most efficient to be able to do it, so.
Well, and part of what it is, I mean, I'd like to have the bids out right away, but in the
Right.
same respect, we're still
You're still strapping
hammering,
up.
we're still CCTVing, sewer lines.
Yeah.
I mean, the water department's still doing their due diligence, so that way, cause, I mean, there's streets that we wanna, Nason Street's one of them that we wanna pave.
Yay.
It's in the list for the sewer
Get
rehabilitation
calls on
project,
that all
so.
the time, dude.
Yeah. Did you see the crater at the end of it?
No, again, I'm not here, I'm not
No,
gonna I'm not beating you up anymore, I'm just saying,
The
it's
prob-
nice to hear it.
And the problem is, though, is I mean, that was one of the priorities for this year, but it's also on the sewer line replacement project.
Right.
So that means
Yeah,
they'll
everybody's,
pave it.
everybody's gotta go
Don't pave
through
it till
there.
you're done. Next.
Right.
Right. No, I didn't see a single person nodding this way. The fact is, spring is acceptable. If it's on the horizon, it's on the horizon.
I'm sure you'll move it forward sooner if you get the opportunity to move it forward.
Second time, next.
Good thing we got you moving us forward, Chris.
All right, we're done with the second page. All right.
So do you wanna go,
Budget
we've already
recommendations?
talked about that. I kinda did that on the,
Everything on that page has been addressed.
Yes.
Future budget consideration.
that's it. I crossed out the things that I've already dealt with, we don't need to talk about.
Okay, you can relinquish the seat, sir. We're at library. Come on down.
Yeah, there it is. Good evening.
All right, why don't you bring us up to speed for the additional listening public of what brings you here for the 20-hour position, please?
We took a look at our staffing, and there is a 20-hour part-time position. We had requested an additional 8 hours. And with those additional hours, we want to extend some of the summer programs. We were successful last summer in doing the evening program as well as the Tuesday program. People have asked us if we could possibly extend it to a Saturday program. And Saturday is problematic because that's the day that we have minimal staff. One adult staff person and one in the children's room. So you can't be away from the desk and do a program. They've also asked us to bring back a Saturday during the school year, a story time for the little guys. A lot of people can't get to us on Thursday mornings. Parents work, they're in daycare and all. So Bill has been trying to do it on a trial basis. As he's watching the desk, he's trying to read to the little kids. With 3 or 4, it's working, but word is getting out that we're trying to do this, and parents are happy with this. Anymore, he's either gonna have to have backup, or we'll have to say, gee, we can't help you, and that's difficult, because I think families deserve the same service, whether they can get to us on a Saturday or a Tuesday or, even a Friday. One of the things that we have been asked to do is bring back adult programming. We did in April bring back a program. We had 19 Lisbon residents who came out on a Wednesday night and learned organizational skills. They had a blast. They learned something. They were appreciative that they didn't have to go to Brunswick. They didn't have to go to Lewiston. It was convenient. It was free. And they had a good time being out with their friends, their cousins. One lady brought her cousins and asked us if we could provide more adult programs. We have put folders together. We've talked to other libraries, and some of the things they're asking are more things, not educational per se, how do you do your taxes, but things that would be of interest to adults in this community. We don't want to step on the toes of adult ed or historical society, but there's other needs for adult programming. So that's what that 8 hours would address, is additional programming. We've successfully transitioned our system to Mills last Monday, and it's going well. However, it takes all of us to do it, and to have that extra push would make a difference to move us forward, because I don't want to toot our own horn, but I think that we'll become one of the, we're a family. This Mills is like a family, but I think we're big enough, we're unique enough, and we just want it to work, that I think we'll be one of the libraries that will be in the forefront of this program. So with that in mind, we went live last Tuesday. Our people are already liking that they can go on their pods, pads, and devices and order materials from our fellow Mills libraries. However, the 30th, we go full statewide. Every library that you can think of, from Presque Isle to York, we can borrow from, but they can borrow from us. And the state was very pleasantly surprised. They uploaded about 40,000 items. Our little library has 40,000 items. They expected a lot more duplication. She found more than 25,000 items that are unique to Lisbon.
That's awesome.
That's awesome. I felt that that's how it would play out, and I'm so honored and so proud of our library, frankly, because that puts us in a place out on the map in the state of Maine where I think we want to be. It's positive, and it goes with whatever we're trying to do in this town, not in just buildings and all, but services all around, all our services. And so with that in mind, I think people from other areas are going to want some of those 25,000, and we want to send them and share with them and get our little flyer out to them that says, if you come to Lisbon, there's trails, there's canoeing and all. So that's all positive. So that's what that position would do. Thank you.
Toot. Right.
Anybody from the council want to weigh in?
I just did.
I know you did. I appreciate that too.
I think we're in a place where we can do this.
Yeah, I think for $4,000, you get a lot of bang for your buck there in terms of how it impacts people in the community. There's a lot of families that would benefit from that. So I think it'd be, penny wise, pound foolish to not spend a little bit of money for the benefit you get.
We're farther down the road, we get a little bit better picture of what we're going on, what we're up against, and I think this is a wise investment resource.
Agreed. I've heard very good things about the adult programming, and I have been solicited, associated with this. There is a need, and thank you for serving the public here.
Our pleasure.
I think we heard from the school too, they're cutting back a lot on adult ed, so there's gonna be more of a hole
Right.
there.
Good on mind, that's perfect, exactly, great point, Mark, great point.
Mhm.
So thank you very much for picking up
Perfect.
and identifying.
Our pleasure, and we've got people who want to come in to do art classes, finger painting for adults. Sounds kind of cool on a Saturday afternoon, and other classes that would be appropriate when it starts budget season. I think people maybe in this setting is a little much, but a little bit of punch and cookies at the library, sitting around with counselors and saying, what do you want to see is probably a little bit easier than for them to come out at a location like this.
And we all love punching cookies.
Yes.
Hey. You make a great point, though, and I had the good fortune of visiting you a couple weeks ago. You were very able to help me with my issues, and I appreciated that. But it was just fun to visit. I hadn't been in since some of the changes, and I realized that that was my loss, because you guys have some really good stuff going on there, and there was a lot of excitement and buzz about the Mills system. So no good reason for me to not visit again and come back and take a peek.
We're very excited about this. This is the right move for our library, and it's moving us forward where we're in with the state, and when the state is forced to do something, they will be, we'll be right there. Our records will be good, and our patrons will be used to this service. We had a patron that tested it quite early, thought it was after midnight, and tried to order. And they do it 6 a.m.-ish in Orono on the campus. And we let that patron know that after 6 a.m. and all is well with that patron at this time. So we're pleased that people are taking an interest and want this service, and it's an honor for us to be able to do this for them.
How about a chance to quickly showcase how's the efforts going with the summer reading program?
We have raised $350. Frank, was 1,000, but I think this was the year that there was a lot of other fundraising going on, which is wonderful in this town because, as I say, everything is moving and it's benefiting everyone. So it has paid for one of the programs. It has paid for the one that we'll have in mid-July, and we have already taken care of the kickoff program, Mad Scientist. So that's all there. We have begun to sign up kids. They're very interested. They like the theme, make a difference in your world, your community, your home. And so we're trying to bring in other little programs. We're thinking we can bring in the chiefs to read to the kids. They make a difference in our community. And
He's read Dr. Seuss, I know that.
And I think that makes a difference. They're not just people, you know, on a website. And so that's the theme, and I think they'll have fun with it. We have some fun science things planned with them. We're going to grow some fruits. Well, I don't know about the fruits. They think watermelon, but a few little vegetables. And if we're successful, we'll share them with on the counter with the seniors who come in on a regular basis. It's always nice to do that. So that's the theme, and I think it'll be successful and fun for the entire community. So we're looking forward to it. Our numbers, we hope, are about the same. We had about 125 kids, and that's a big turnout for a community our size. So be all hands on deck. Nobody gets vacation. We do this. All 6 of us do this, and we bring in the summer intern. If the budget goes that way, that person is ready to hit the ground running July 1st. So all is good with that.
Thank you, Ms. Nutter. Thank you.
My pleasure. You're welcome.
Please.
No, we're done everything on the front page, so we can go
Right
to
on.
the back page to wastewater treatment plant, 190,000.
Great, thank you. These are,
Those are all the improvements we talked about when they had the, was it Oliver?
Over, yeah.
Yeah, Oliver, that's what it was. When they came in and did that presentation with us.
what was
I don't
the
remember why
reason
that was
why they
put
stuck
on.
to the, why is it come back
I'm
here?
just sitting here thinking why
'Cause
you
there was
wanted
a lot
it
of
on the
stuff
list.
that we ended up talking about, I remember that.
That's in-
We workshop dovetailed with us having discussion about, but onto our budget workshop.
Yeah, it's the improvements.
And it's
line.
funded from the rate increases.
Yes.
Yeah, that's
yes.
exactly.
This budget will be funded from the rate increases, yeah.
Can you refresh your memory why the improvements are coming back here tonight?
Huh?
No. I'm hearing a no.
It's in the budget, but you
It's
wanted
in
it
the
on
budget. Why are we back here tonight on that?
190,000. You remember, Ryan,
That
from
was
that
a laundry
meeting?
list of improvements, I thought.
The
one right
190
here?
is the dumping station.
You have it?
That's
I
what
don't
that
have
is,
that.
the dumping, 190 is the dumping
190
station.
is the dumping station.
Right.
Yeah, thanks.
I don't know why you wanted it on
I'm
there.
here trying to help.
I don't remember.
What is, bring me up to speed again, what's the dumping station part of it?
Currently, with our wastewater, our sewer vector truck, we don't have the ability, if we suck out a sewer line, to easily dump it at the treatment plant.
Okay.
We've been talking about this for a long time, and just haven't come up with the really, the right solution to invest in doing it, because the treatment plant, the way it's set up, gives us limited space to put a facility in, so we really didn't know what we wanted to do at this point.
And this
and
is
we've
based on
kinda
a
waited.
recommendation from Oliver.
That's the budgetary number that Oliver had put in there, which seems very high, but that was what we have to work with at this point. So that's why it was labeled in there. I'm not sure why we wanted to talk about it again, honestly.
I don't know either. Not
'Cause it was
It
a little
stands,
long list
it's
that night.
there, it's budgeted, the bigger issue associated with this is the rate increase to talk about what we already there. That was the lion's share of our discussion that night to get what we need to be in a position to be able to find the funding to do the capital improvements to our network.
And to do it, raising the rates allows us, well, not only to pay for it, but also,
Opens up funding source.
yes, the grant opportunities increase.
Right.
It seems kinda
That's what they said.
odd, but
I remember you point that out. One of the big takeaways for me from
It's
that
all
meeting
coming
was
back
that-
now.
I
Well,
just don't remember why it came back.
one of the big takeaways for me from that meeting was that, their suggestions, there being Oliver, is saying that, our rates needed to be increased in order for us to qualify for more grant monies, because if we
Right.
left them as it was, we would not be considered in the running for as much grant money, and and we have definite infrastructure issues with all of us saying it's out of sight, out of mind. We have some pipes underground here that are over 100 years old. So when we have the runoff or surge in water and it has to go through the waste treatment plant, we have to pay for that. So if we cleaned up the infrastructure, we're in better shape.
Well, we have to do it one way or the other, and
Oh, yeah.
we're better off if we can get some grant money to do it.
Right. And I think, didn't we do like comparison of local towns? We're pretty
Yes.
well below the curve, if my memory serves me
Way
correctly.
below. Richmond charges more than we do.
And I'm not a big fan of, and I think we talked about a graduated rate, and so we don't, nobody has sticker shock when they open up their bill. So.
I think the only thing that's left here is you've given us an accounting of the 70,000 that's actually in the building perm that we talked about last time, as well as what those projects were, because last year you were able to give us a project list of what the priorities are. The only exception to this is the ET Foes earmarking the funds to be able to do it. It wasn't in the budget, it was through the fund balance. Any other items for budget and anything that we've heard today?
The only other thing that I don't know about yet is the town insurances. But I think that, we're getting a quote from another company right now. And I should have that within the next couple of weeks, so I think we might even see it go down.
Contract negotiations.
We're in the middle of that. We've got meetings coming up,
Okay, yeah, I knew it was.
5th and 6th of June.
Okay.
Nothing's
That's pretty
settled
close.
yet.
Well, 20th is the public hearing, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, so we got time.
I mean, if we know before then, we can adjust the budget, but I don't know.
Insurance rates are solid?
Like health insurance?
I don't know that yet.
When-
I mean, I've budgeted, what did we budget,
Right, right.
9%?
Right,
Yeah, I think that's gonna more than cover any increase.
but that only,
That
that's
starts-
6 months at 9, right?
Right, yes,
Cause that only kicks in January.
right. The other insurance is your property and casualty, that's what I haven't gotten the quote on yet.
Right. But our budget reflects the 9%
Starting
for the
January
January 6
1st,
months
yeah.
at that rate.
Yes, yes.
There's no chance that that would come in before,
No, we don't set those rates until October.
so we're always a year behind. No, I get it, we're good. Anything else anybody wishes to express for this year's budget?
Come on, June 20th.
Anything in the back row that we didn't hit rest for? We tried to take what you guys actually gave us for a list of pretty dark news in
See you, Ryan.
January to get to this point. Good job.
Thank you. I know you guys have attended one or two of these, right? One or two. You're a little bit later than.
Right. All right. Thank you all for coming out.
But no formal adjournment.
No, we didn't formally enter, so.
Amen. Don't be afraid to take a seat, put it back. Jody, you breaking this down tonight?
No.
Okay.
I'm just
I'll
gonna
stick
leave it.
around and give you a hand.
You want a hand if you got it? Hey, you want a hand if you got it?
No, we can
I'll
leave
give it to the guy that's never here.
Yeah.
Wouldn't say that? Hey, wouldn't be half as fun, Chris.
Well, I sat down and I kind of almost went tumbling, and I'm like, oh, that's not gonna put the dress on.